In a small, struggling household, life was shaped by poverty and silent tension. Food was scarce, and every meal felt uncertain. Yet, the greatest burden was not hunger, it was expectation. Quixote, the father, believed that only a son could bring honor and continuation to his name. With each child born, his hope grew, and then shattered. Suzanne, his wife, carried both physical and emotional weight. Despite exhaustion and pain, she continued to endure, hoping for peace in her family. But each time she gave birth to a daughter, disappointment filled the home. Instead of joy, there were sighs, anger, and harsh words. The daughters, innocent and unaware of the depth of their father's resentment, simply longed for love. They asked simple questions: whether their father would bring food home, whether things would get better. Suzanne did her best to comfort them, hiding her pain behind gentle reassurances. As she approached childbirth once again, fear mixed with fragile hope. She knew what was at stake. In that house, love had become conditional, and her worth seemed tied to something she could not control. Still, she held on, because for her, her children were never a disappointment, but her only reason to keep going. After Suzanne gave birth to her fifth daughter, the fragile hope she held on to shattered completely. Instead of joy, Quixote reacted with rage and bitterness. To him, another girl was not a blessing, but a burden he refused to accept. In a moment of cruelty, he turned his back on his own family. Still weak and exhausted from childbirth, Suzanne begged him not to do this. She pleaded not for herself, but for their children, his children. With tears in her eyes, she reminded him that they had nowhere to go, no food, no shelter. But Quixote's heart had hardened. Blinded by pride and his obsession with having a son, he refused to listen. Without hesitation, he forced Suzanne and their 5 daughters out of the house. The door that once symbolized home was now closed to them forever. The children cried, confused and frightened, clinging to their mother for safety. They could not understand why their father had abandoned them. Standing outside with her newborn in her arms and her daughters by her side, Suzanne felt the weight of the world crash down on her. Yet even in that moment of despair, she held them close. Determined that no matter what, she would not abandon them the way their father had. Left with nowhere to go, Suzanne and her 5 daughters faced the harsh reality of life on the streets. The nights were cold, and the ground beneath them was unforgiving. With no shelter and barely any food, survival became a daily battle. Her children, too young to understand the full weight of their situation, clung to her with quiet fear, asking questions she could barely answer. Determined not to give up, Suzanne spent each day searching for work. She knocked on doors, offering to clean, cook, or do anything in exchange for a small meal. But rejection followed her everywhere. People looked at her with suspicion or turned her away because of her children. Still, she refused to let despair win. Eventually, she found small, exhausting jobs that paid just enough to keep her children alive. She carried heavy loads, worked under the scorching sun, and pushed her body beyond its limits. Many days, she chose not to eat so her daughters could have a little more. Hunger became familiar, but her love never weakened. At night, she held her children close, whispering promises of a better tomorrow. She reassured them that they were not mistakes, that they were her greatest blessings. Even when her strength faded, her spirit did not. Every sacrifice she made was driven by one purpose: to protect her daughters and give them a chance at a future she never had. Through pain, exhaustion, and endless struggle, Suzanne became more than just a mother. She became their shelter, their strength, and their hope in a world that had turned its back on them. Despite the hardships they faced, Suzanne's daughters grew up with strength, discipline, and determination. Watching their mother struggle every day to provide for them became their greatest motivation. They understood early in life that nothing would be given to them. They had to earn everything through hard work. At school, they stood out. While other children complained, they remained focused and grateful for every opportunity to learn. Long nights of studying, combined with their mother's encouragement, helped them achieve excellent results. One by one, they began to top their classes, earning recognition from teachers and respect from others. Their dedication paid off. Because of their outstanding performance, their school fees were covered, lifting a heavy burden off Suzanne's shoulders. For the first time in years, there was a sense of hope growing stronger within the family. But beyond success, what truly set them apart was their love for their mother. They never forgot her sacrifices, the hunger she endured, the pain she hid, and the strength she showed. They promised themselves that one day they would repay her kindness. To them, Suzanne was not just a mother. She was their hero, their inspiration, and the reason they believed a better future was possible. After abandoning Suzanne and his daughters, Quixote built a new life with another woman, still driven by his deep desire for a son. In time, his wish was fulfilled. When his wife gave birth to a boy, Quixote felt a sense of pride he had long chased. He believed that finally his life was complete, that having a son would bring him honor, stability, and happiness. At first, everything seemed to align with his expectations. He celebrated his son, imagining a future where his name and legacy would be carried on. But that illusion did not last. As the boy grew older, problems began to surface. He was constantly involved in fights, refused to listen, and showed little interest in school. Complaints from teachers became frequent, and tension filled the household. Instead of the peace Quixote had hoped for, his home was now filled with frustration and disappointment. Quixote's new wife began to question him, pointing out that the son he once believed would change everything was in fact creating chaos. The very thing he had sacrificed his first family for was now the source of his stress. Slowly, reality set in. Quixote started to realize that having a son did not guarantee happiness, respect, or success. What mattered was not gender, but love, guidance, and values, things he had once thrown away. For the first time, doubt and regret began to creep into his heart. As time passed, the life Quixote had chosen began to fall apart. The peace he once expected never came, and the pride he held onto slowly turned into emptiness. His son, the very reason he had abandoned his first family, brought constant trouble instead of joy. Financial struggles grew, arguments filled his home, and the sense of control he once had slipped away. With each passing day, regret weighed heavier on his heart. He started to reflect on the past, the moment he turned his back on Suzanne and his daughters. What he once saw as a burden, he now understood as something precious. The memories he had ignored began to return, and for the first time he saw the truth clearly. He realized that he hadn't just made a mistake, he had lost something irreplaceable. His daughters, who could have brought him pride and happiness, were gone. Suzanne, who had loved him and stood by him, was no longer part of his life. "I threw away diamonds," he finally admitted to himself. But by then, it was too late. The damage had been done, and the life he had once abandoned was no longer waiting for him. Years of hardship slowly transformed into a story of strength and triumph for Suzanne and her daughters. What once began with pain, hunger, and rejection gradually turned into hope, built on perseverance and love. The girls, who had grown up witnessing their mother's sacrifices, carried those lessons into their own lives. Through dedication and discipline, each of them pursued education and opportunities with unwavering focus. Step by step, they achieved success in their respective paths, earning recognition and building stable futures. Their achievements were not just personal victories. They were proof that their mother's struggles had meaning. As their lives improved, they made a decision from the heart. It was time to give back to the woman who had given them everything. Together, they planned a surprise for Suzanne. Without telling her, they prepared a new home, a place filled with comfort, safety, and dignity, something she had been denied for so long. When they finally brought her there, Suzanne was overwhelmed with emotion. She could hardly believe that this beautiful home was for her. Tears filled her eyes as she realized that her daughters had not only survived, they had truly thrived. In that moment, all the pain of the past felt lighter. Her sacrifices had not been in vain. Surrounded by love and gratitude, Suzanne finally experienced the peace she had fought so hard to give her children. One day, the past came knocking, literally. After years of absence, Quixote finally found the courage to face the family he had abandoned. Standing at the gate, he was no longer the proud man he once was, but someone broken, humbled, and filled with regret. When Suzanne saw him again, there was no anger in her eyes, only calm strength shaped by years of hardship. Her daughters stood beside her, protective and united, no longer the helpless children he had once left behind. They had grown into strong, confident women. Quixote struggled to find words. His voice trembled as he admitted his mistakes, confessing that his obsession with having a son had blinded him. He spoke of his regrets, of how he had lost everything that truly mattered. For the first time, he acknowledged the pain he had caused. The moment was heavy with emotion. Memories of suffering, abandonment, and resilience filled the air. Yet despite everything, Suzanne remained composed. She had already endured the worst, and she no longer needed anything from the man who once broke her. This was not just a reunion, it was a confrontation between the past and the present, where truth could no longer be denied. When Quixote finally asked to return, hoping to rebuild what he had lost, the answer he received was not what he wished for. Suzanne looked at him with calm eyes, no longer carrying anger, but also no longer carrying hope for him. Time and pain had changed her. She had learned to stand on her own, to survive without him, and to find strength within herself and her daughters. She told him that she had already forgiven him long ago. Holding on to bitterness would have only kept her trapped in the past. Forgiveness, for her, was a way to heal and move forward. But forgiveness did not mean forgetting, and it certainly did not mean allowing him back into their lives as if nothing had happened. Her daughters stood firmly beside her, their presence a reflection of everything she had built without him. They had grown up witnessing her struggles, her sacrifices, and her resilience. They would not allow anyone to hurt her again. Suzanne made it clear that Quixote could visit if he wished, but he could never return as part of their family. Some things, once broken, cannot be restored to what they once were. In that moment, Quixote understood the true cost of his actions. He had not only lost his family, he had lost his place in their hearts. Forgiveness had been given, but the door to the past remained closed forever. In the end, the story leaves behind a powerful and lasting message about love, value, and the consequences of reminds us that children are not defined by their gender, but by the love, care, and guidance they receive. Every child, whether a boy or a girl, carries the potential to bring joy, pride, and meaning into a family. Quixote's life became a clear example of how blind beliefs and pride can lead to devastating loss. His obsession with having a son caused him to reject the very people who loved him unconditionally. In chasing what he thought would bring honor, he lost his true honor instead: his family, his peace, and his happiness. On the other hand, Suzanne's journey reflects the incredible strength of a mother's love. Despite being abandoned, facing hunger, rejection, and exhaustion, she never gave up on her children. Her sacrifices became the foundation of their future. Through her resilience, she proved that love, not circumstance, shapes destiny. The daughters represent hope and transformation. They turned pain into purpose, hardship into motivation, and struggle into success. Their achievements were not just personal victories, but a testament to their mother's unwavering devotion. Perhaps the most profound lesson is this: forgiveness is not the same as restoration. Suzanne chose to forgive, not because Quixote deserved it, but because she deserved peace. However, she also understood that some wounds change relationships forever. In the end, the story teaches us to value what we have before it's too late, to love without condition, and to never let pride blind us to what truly matters in life.